Well, Auditor-General Kimi Makwetu's report on the 2016-2017 municipal audits shows that many local government administrations have regressed. Makwetu says the latest results show that many officials have not heeded advice from his office. Corruption still said to be the major reason for poor service delivery in many municipalities. Well, for a discussion on this now, we're joined in studio by corporate governance and anti-corruption consultant and author Peter Goss. Peter, thanks so much for coming in. I think just for the information of our viewers, this title we've given you, corporate governance and anti-corruption consultant and author, where do we place you in this conversation around accountability in municipalities?
One of the biggest bases for managing these problems is a culture of corporate governance supported by responsiveness sometimes and proactiveness most times to mitigating the risks long before it emerges in relation to financial statement fraud, financial irregularities, as has been reported now by the Auditor-General and has been reported for many years by the Auditor-General going backwards.
I mean, if we look at the numbers, they are shocking. I mean, I get a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. This number of 28.4 billion rand in unnecessary expenditure, 16 billion rand in irregular expenditure. I mean, they're shocking to look at now, but I do get a feeling that we've been reporting on the same story for so many years, and we've not seen this picture change. Where are we going wrong? We're
going wrong with simply reacting. The systems in place are well entrenched. The problem is the implementation of those systems. When you talk about irregular expenditure, it's as simple as not following rules. So irregular means you didn't follow the due processes and due rules and due authorization processes for a particular transaction to take place. That this keeps happening says to you that the whole corporate governance framework is not in place. And what you then have is a reactive approach to these matters, which you'll see for the short to medium term in relation to these matters, which is conduct forensic audits, respond, and you never see much more over the years thereafter. So what you need is something more comprehensive. One, a corporate governance culture that's instilled in this organization to comply with the procurement policies and supply chain policies and procedures. More importantly, a more comprehensive form of crisis management, which is yet to be launched. So one of our specialisms is crisis management, which is comprehensively understand why is this actually happening? Is it perhaps because the supply chain system is still too bureaucratic and needs to be bypassed to make things happen? Or is it that people in the supply chain management system are actually corrupt? There's two different questions. And if they are actually corrupt, are we responding comprehensively to this crisis in supply chain, which goes upwards towards a crisis in corporate governance? So do we then go after leaders that are responsible for corporate governance of the particular municipality? In other words, the mayoral committee of the municipality. Do we look upwards at who opened the door? Do we look upwards at what's been the role of the municipal manager in this particular matter and his executive? Or do we just simply look at the supply chain officials and downstream, those who process transactions at an operational level? So we're really missing out on the comprehensive crisis management and corporate governance in this arena. And it will continue to exacerbate, worsen over time. And as you can see, it is worsening over time, or at best, it's remaining stably bad over the course of time.
I mean, the argument you're making there about whether there perhaps is too much red tape to get things done in municipalities, and so that's why we're seeing people not follow due process. I mean, that would be something that might be believable if service delivery was in fact taking place. Yes, due process is not being followed, but we can see that services are being delivered to these communities, but that's not the case.
I absolutely agree with the manner in which you put this forward. Service delivery is the ultimate purpose of good corporate governance in an entity that is serving the public. So most people think corporate governance is about governing, controlling. No, it's about delivering or leveraging opportunity to deliver. And in the public service context, in the local government context, which is not public service as such, technically speaking, it is about delivering services and which services give value to those in need, the public themselves. You don't have a culture that is directed in that fashion. The culture is directed in how we control getting to some sort of elementary form of service delivery, as opposed to a culture of service delivery first, as opposed to process first.
I mean, President Cyril Ramaphosa himself has said, you know, there are people in charge of money who are more concerned with enriching themselves than they are with actually using the money for what it's meant for, particularly in municipalities. When we look forward to the future, and I don't want us to use the word task team or high-level investigation or anything like that, for the people of South Africa who are watching and who are in the doldrums about yet more billions being spent irregularly, how do you see this unfolding over the next years?
How I would make it unfold.
How would you make it unfold?
I would make it unfold as follows. What you have now is you're going to have again a short to medium term focus of many forensic audits that come out with the very obvious answer that something is wrong and somebody didn't follow rules and somebody was non-adherent to those particular rules and should be disciplined. That person tends to be a very junior person, and sometimes a chief financial officer, and sometimes a procurement manager, very rarely a chief financial officer or procurement manager. This time we should perhaps be thinking of something more comprehensive. Some sort of crisis management structure that considers what has been the impact of this gross irregularity that we've seen that has led to the report by the Auditor-General. That crisis management process should include putting together a team of independent, unattached experts that are not scared to tell the truth and recommend the processes that are beyond your normal statutory supply chain processes. What this needs is bravado to look upwards and say, where was the mayoral committee? 2, what happened to past audit reports and what was done about them? 3, where are the current combined assurance providers like internal audits, and are there reports being adhered to? Because I can assure you, there are reports coming out on a monthly basis from internal auditors about these matters, and they are not being even read or responded to in any cases. So if you have a more comprehensive system that considers, we knew this problem before an auditor called an Auditor-General came along to tell us about it. Now we start saying to ourselves, let's go back to what we already knew before we were being told by an auditor. Let's fix that up and put independent people in place to advise us on what to do. We have audit committees, for example, a Municipal Public Finance Accounts Committee. They call them MPACs. The MPAC should really be the one that should have held people to account long before an Auditor-General's report. An MPAC should be a proactive body, understanding the risk, mitigating the risk, and acting promptly before the risk even emerges. The risk is also to service delivery. So they should be looking at the risk, that opportunity to create, to give back to the community is not being taken. And what happens is these committees tend to focus very actively on how do we control public servants? How do we control municipal employees? How do we prevent corruption, as opposed to how do we deliver services while mitigating the risks that might emerge, such as, for example, corruption. Yeah. So I would go structurally from the top. 1, a very high level, more independent structure, make the impacts more effective, give them more teeth, and get the impacts aligned with other authorities that can enforce. Authorities like law enforcement authorities, authorities like disciplinary and misconduct tribunal authorities, and of course authorities like advisors who can fix control and corporate governance. We have not lifted this up at the MPAC level, Municipal Public Accounts Committee level, nor at the mayoral committee level, to a corporate governance dilemma and a significant crisis to sustainability of municipalities.
Well, let's hope that the powers that be are listening to these incredible suggestions from you. Thanks very much for your time and coming into studio. Corporate governance and anti-corruption consultant and author Peter Goss joining us in studio.